The end is almost near. Waiting for the election, that is. The Trump campaign, sensing a path to victory, pulls out all the stops for last-minute appeals across the country's battleground states. Will it be enough? In 2 days, we will know the answer. The Hillary Clinton campaign is trying to maintain a lead in the important polls and push past the recent FBI disclosures of possibly more suspicious emails. What impact is FBI Director Comey's announcement likely to have? Our Election Day experts are here to talk about that and the impacts on very important local elections as well. And it's been 75 years of trying to make cancer history. MD Anderson President Dr. Ronald DePino is here to talk about accomplishments so far and the potential for what's ahead.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
The early voter turnout blew away existing records throughout Southeast Texas. The numbers were also high across the state as 27% of eligible voters cast ballots. Harris County was so impressive that more ballots were cast in the first 4 days than 5 states cast in the entire 2012 presidential election. And when you look at the early voting pace this year, the more than 800,000, which is a record, combined with the mail-in ballots, it'll mean about 950,000 ballots will have been cast before Election Day, almost as much as all of the votes in 2012. And with an expected 300 to 400,000 on Tuesday, who knows what number could be reached. It's not going to stop us from talking about it. What does that turnout mean for the results here in Southeast Texas this morning? Professor Mark Jones, he's a fellow in political science at Rice University's Baker Institute, and Dwight Borkins, Houston City Council District D, the Democrat and Hillary Clinton supporter. Good to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
So we saw those record turnout numbers, and what does it mean? Does it mean it favors one party or another when you see those kind of turnout?
Well, when we're looking at the early vote numbers, we're in a process where every presidential election cycle, early voting gets more and more popular. And we've seen the partisans turn out. About 2/3 of people with partisan voting records in the Republican or Democratic primaries have turned out already. What we'll wait to see on Election Day is if sort of more regular voters actually turn out and boost turnout this year compared to past cycles, or if we're about in the same range where about 60% of registered voters turn out. When we look at the enthusiasm, Democrats have a slight edge in some areas, but Republicans in others, particularly in the exurb counties, places like Montgomery County and Brazoria County here in the Houston metro area, and Collin County and Denton County up in the Metroplex.
Dwight, what do you think is going to happen on Election Day? You kind of get the pulse of what the Democrats are thinking now. With Republicans very excited about Donald Trump, what do you sense is going to be the turnout for Democrats and maybe the rest of the county?
Well, there are a lot of good Republicans excited about Hillary Clinton as well. Let's be clear about that, because they're crossing over. They realize that Donald Trump is the reason early voting numbers are up around the country. And I say that because you look at Harris County, now the state of Texas is being looked at as a purple state moving towards a blue state, because you have a nominee at the top that has been so divisive. You have the Hispanic community on the national level, polling at 50% greater than the last election when President Obama was running the first time. I say that to say this man is so divisive. You have Republicans supporting Hillary Clinton because she's trying to bring everybody together. You have a high turnout in the Muslim community, the African-American community in particular. That's what's driving these numbers.
Mark, there are a lot of people who would say that you're thinking that this state is going to go from red to anything other than red is a dream.
Oh, this cycle, it's a dream. There's no way whatsoever that Hillary Clinton's going to win Texas this cycle. Now, she could close it within 2 or 3 points, as some polls predict. I would project more a Trump victory in the lines of somewhere in the high single digits, 8 to 9%. And actually, the higher it gets, the more problematic it is for Democrats, because if Donald Trump can win by 8 or 9 points, and he, as Dwight mentioned, he's a very problematic and divisive candidate at the top of the ticket, that doesn't speak well for, say, 2018. If, on the other hand, Democrats can cut it to 2 or 3 or 4 points, then that provides some optimism moving towards the future.
What do you think the announcement by FBI Director Comey had on this whole thing? Because he announced that there may be some emails that could be, there's nothing there at this point, but just the fact that there might be. What do you think that's done to either dampen the Clinton or Republican supporters? What is your sense?
Well, I think it's slowed Clinton's momentum down, Cambrell. I don't think it's turned voters away. National polls are indicating that she hadn't really taken a major dip. But, you know, let me be clear about these emails. Most people, Democrats and Republicans, that are focus on this national race, they're not really so much concerned about it. They want to talk about the future of this country. But if the Russians would tap into Trump's emails, just imagine what we would find. Just imagine. So it's unfair the way they're just coming at her from one perspective. It's very clear that what the FBI director did was the timing was off. It was a bad decision. He did not, from my understanding and my research, consult with with Loretta Lynch, who is the Justice Department director. He just went, rogue, and that was not the right time and the right thing to do.
All right, let's talk about local issues now. Yeah. The local race, the marquee race, Harris County District Attorney. Polls indicated that was tight, but with Ogg leading. Can they be believed? Or do you get that sense as well?
Oh, I think one of the clear things when we look at Election Day is that Kim Ogg has a substantial advantage over Devin Anderson. Donald Trump is a millstone around many Harris County Republicans' necks. Devin Anderson doesn't have full support among the Republican Party base. Some have some issues with her. And then finally, Kim Ogg's received $850,000 from George Soros. That's a lot of money for a district attorney's race, and that's allowed her to dominate the airwaves over Devin Anderson.
And what about the fairness of that? Somebody with outside big cash money like that coming in and influencing a local race. I've heard a lot of feedback from Republicans who say, wait a minute, come on, we don't need an outside guy influencing our local races.
Like Koch. The Koch brothers. Absolutely. They're absolutely correct. The Koch brothers drive national and congressional elections, Cambrell. So, I'm not getting in the middle of that DA's race. I can tell you people are not focused on the sheriff's race. That's going to be a big upset.
Well, let's talk about that.
I think Ed Gonzalez will win this race. I think he has a great opportunity with his crossover appeal to come across as the candidate with the vision and fairness.
Mark, I noticed that some of the recent polling, U of H did some polling that showed that race was pretty much a dead heat. Yeah. There were a lot of undecideds in that as well, though. So how do you really get a sense of it?
Well, a lot of people, a lot of Harris County voters don't really know there's a sheriff's race yet. That is, when they find out is going to be when they're voting down the ballot and they come across the race. Others are going to vote straight ticket Republican and Democrat. Hickman's a strong candidate, but Gonzalez is a very high quality candidate as well. And so we're in a situation where that's going to be neck and neck with Hickman potentially having the potential to win, but Gonzalez as well.
Well, we're going to look forward to that. We've got much more to talk about, including the big question being asked of Harris County voters by HISD, and voters are also being asked to go wet or dry, alcohol or no alcohol.
That's right.
We'll talk about all that coming up right after this break. We'll be right back.